What's up, beautiful souls? It's Dr. Lee here, and I'm actually super excited to invite you to what for me has been the safest, most consistent, most powerful way to connect with your multi-dimensional self in a safe retreat setting. I'm telling you guys, the ceremonies are getting more and more powerful. People are being liberated. Souls are starting to remember who they are. Families are being healed. And this is one of my greatest joys to offer this to whoever feels called. It's a sacred contract that I call the Heart Protocol. It's a 4 to 6 hour ceremonial experience in a retreat setting where you can connect to your higher self and you can record it into a recording if you decide to speak, and bring back a multi-dimensional soul transcript which can help catalyze you onto a higher timeline, into a higher frequency, and ultimately a higher destiny. For those who feel the call, check out www.transcendencementalhealth.com and click begin your journey to schedule a free 15-minute call to see if you are a good fit for the Heart Protocol. Unite an army of love, create heaven on earth. If you feel the call, would love to see you at an upcoming retreat. Peace. What's up, beautiful souls? Welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Psychiatrist Podcast. And today you are in for a treat. I want to introduce our special guest today, Sir Paul Hutchinson. And, he's probably lived 10 lives in one life so far, or maybe even more. I have the pleasure of knowing him personally. Have spent time with him, have sat with him, and, he built a financial empire, and he did that. And so we're excited to dive into the wisdom he received in that. But more importantly, he also used to throw some epic Halloween parties out in Salt Lake City, did that for a while. But more importantly, he had this experience now where he's like on this consciousness path. And he started going on undercover missions, risking his life to save trafficked children. And so I'm really excited to dive into that story, how that happened, and what that's all about, and courage that he displayed, and how we can help liberate trafficked children around the world today. So he literally risked his personal life after building a fortune, and to do that shows his character. Also, he was executive producer of Sound of Freedom. So I want to dive into, his involvement in that movie, which, helped spread so much awareness around that topic. And most importantly, I've had the privilege of spending time with his beautiful family. He's a beautiful family man, and they have a beautiful healing center, and they're doing amazing retreats and helping tons of people. And also, more importantly, I got to sit with them. And when you sit with someone, you really get to see someone's heart. And this man is, in integrity. He's here to help liberate all sentient beings. His heart is radiating love, and he's lived such a beautiful life. So I'm really excited to dive in. Paul, thanks for being on the show, brother.
Thank you, Dr. Sam. Super excited to be here. I do have to say, you called me Sir Paul Hutchinson. I got knighted 3 times, so it's Sir, and I got 12 honorary doctorates, so it's Doctor. But I'm going to have a business card that says Paul Hutchinson DMA. And people say, what is a DMA? The Doctor of Medical? DMA doesn't mean anything, right? Because in reality, you and I, we both got these letters behind our names and whatnot. You actually did a lot more. You actually went to school to get your doctorate. I just did a bunch of charity work on mine. But the truth is, it's how we show up in the world. It's where our heart is, and our money, our things, our titles, nothing. They're nothing in comparison to really the person that we are inside. We're not going to take any of them with us after this life. And so, but it's a beautiful honor to have received the accolades. And in some circles, it gives you some credibility when you come in and speak.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about you, brother, because it's not about titles. Yeah, MD, PhD, sir, times 3. But we are, what I've realized is we're in a hologram, and sometimes those titles get you in certain doors, where you put the white coat on, and you have the sir, and, you're, from what I recall, very high ranking in the Templar Association, and, here to reform that association, all these different beautiful things, but it gets you in the door so that there's certain people who are, that still means something to them, so that you can create
Yeah.
impact for humanity. And that's what I love about you. So it's not about titles for sure, and doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. But you can't take that with you when you leave Earth. But it is about creating positive impact for humanity, and you've done it all. You're doing all of that.
That impact not only with the titles, but I tell people it's okay. It's okay to buy a couple helicopters. It's okay to have a beautiful lifestyle. It's okay to have a vision board of a really nice lifestyle. If I tell people I use things, Ferraris and Lambos and jets and all this crap. I use things to motivate myself to do the right thing long enough for me to realize the right reason to be doing it. And the right reason isn't things. It's making a difference. And everybody who, I tell people, for the Christians out there, the Good Samaritan wasn't broke, right? If you want to make a positive impact in the lives of other people, it helps if you have some financial resources to do so. And so, the road in building a multi-billion-dollar company and the blessings that came from being able to contribute, the impact of the Sound of Freedom would have never happened if I hadn't had the money to be able to invest. I was the primary investor and executive producer in the movie, and now 70 million people have seen that film. Hundreds of millions of children are safer because of that investment. And I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity and to have been in the position to make that investment.
Yeah, I love that, Paul. And I'm so happy that you dove into that, because, one of the first steps of helping the poor is don't be poor. And what people really want is freedom. And so you've built a billion-dollar company, and, there's this whole relationship that dates way back to, certain archaic ways where they're like, somehow spirituality was associated with poverty. And, some people said the love of money is the root cause of evil. But what I hear you saying is, no, with this comes a level of ability to actually serve and help people and create positive impact, as you did with the Sound of Freedom. 70 million people are not brought to the awareness of what's really happening. And you're also risked your personal life on that as well. So I would love for you to touch on this, Paul, because and Jesus said, it's harder for a rich man to go through the needle of eye than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. But you prove that false.
Well,
because
let me touch on that.
Go for it. Yeah.
This is super important. So let me shed some light on this. Do you know the actual definition of an eye of a needle? So when you come into, back in the days of Yeshua, there were fortresses that were built around the cities, these walls. And to prevent people from rushing in with their horses and their spears to be able to take over a city, they would make these doorways, okay, that were coming into the city. Now, to get a camel through one of these doorways, he had to unburden himself from all of the things of this world, and he had to get on his knees. Okay? Now that's such an important principle. As you can have massive wealth, but if you're burdened by it, if you're carrying it, if you're defined by all of the things of this world, then yes, it's going to be difficult to be able to progress spiritually. And getting on your knees, a man never stands taller than when he's on his knees, meaning coming to that place of humility in your heart, in your mind, in your life is what is required for that ascension. So yes, it is impossible. It is impossible for a camel to go through the eye of a needle as we see that eye of a needle today. It's this little teeny thing. However, coming into the definition of an eye of a needle back then was that doorway into the city. That camel, to get into that eye of the needle, unburdens himself from the things of this world and gets on his knees.
I love that analogy. I love that. And so it's about being not attached. It's not bad to have it, but being unattached to it and using it, the energy, for positive impact for humanity. And you're doing that, Paul. And so how did this all happen for you, Paul? Just to kind of dive into this, did you have like a sudden experience where there was like a conversion of lifting of consciousness? Was it a gradual increase in consciousness over a period of time? Because I've sat with you when your heart is radiating this frequency of positive impact for humanity, this deep devotion to source that you carry to create positive impact and liberate humanity. And as you were building this financial empire, was there like a certain experience that happened to you that had a conversion, or was it more like a gradual sunset or a
Well,
sunrise?
I think that life, the actual original definition of sin wasn't what we understand it today. A sin was when you were practicing with a target and a bow, and if you were just barely off the mark, that was what a sin was, right? And it was simply a readjustment. An airplane 99% of the time between New York and Los Angeles is actually flying off course. It's a little bit here, and they have to just do small adjustments, and that's what life's about. I look back on my life, and there were many times in my life where my plane was off course, right? Where I was missing that mark. And it happened a lot, but it was a matter of continual readjustment. And in my early 20s, I had, from a charity standpoint, one of my mentors told me, he said, Paul, the average person donates under 2% of their annual income to making a difference in the lives of others. And he said, and once people become millionaires, the average millionaire donates even less from a percentage standpoint. He said, make a decision today that number for you is always over 10%. He said, in fact, you ought to look at numbers of 15 to 20%. He said, you can call it karma, you can call it God, you can call it gifts from the universe, you can call it whatever you want to. There's a higher power very interested in us doing good. And your ability to create the financial abundance that you are seeking will be so much easier if you have that alignment. And so now I was earning $2,000 a month at the time. And I'm like, I said, you know what? I'm barely surviving on this. I'm putting my money back into my company. Wouldn't it be better if I kept that money for myself and put it in my company right now? That way it could grow bigger and faster. And eventually I said, that's why I wanted to be rich. He goes, no, you need to give it now. And I changed a paradigm for me. I for a long time, I wanted to be wealthy so that I could be charitable. I didn't realize that I should be charitable so that I could become wealthy. He switched it completely. And so I started doing that, at 20% of my income at, $2,000 a month. That left us only, $1,600 to work with. But how does somebody become a partner, let alone a co-founder, a $40+ billion real estate investment fund? Where you're not a University of Utah dropout, really. That's what I am. The statistical probability of me being where I am is zero. The only way that I can understand it is that I made that commitment in my early 20s that I was going to donate until it hurt. And hundreds of examples of the literal windows of heaven. In fact, whether you're Christian, you're Muslim, anybody who, even Jews that read the Old Testament, the book of Malachi, the last book in the Old Testament says, prove me now herewith, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and there will not be room enough to receive it. And what is the prove now herewith? It is the tithe. It is 10% of what you bring in, making a difference in the lives of others. Now, I'm not just saying just donate it to your church and don't get involved. Get involved. Find a charity that you're passionate about. Do you realize that if every American, not even the rest of the world, if every American tithed, if every American took 10% of their annual income and found a charity that they were passionate about and got behind that 10% could completely eradicate global hunger, poverty, child abuse, all of these major issues we could tackle. We could eradicate child trafficking completely with those kind of resources. And so all we have to do is say, hey, I don't have to live on 100%. I have to be gluttonous. I can cut it down to 90. I can make a difference in the world with the rest. And so that was the first step. Now, moving forward, I will say that my hard work and my charitable focus created massive abundance for me. And if you're not careful, just like that camel that's attached to all the stuff, you can get super attached. And I was. At one point, I had a house with 7 fireplaces, 8 private suites, 10 bathrooms, 3 kitchens, and a basketball court in my basement. 2 waterfalls on both sides of the house. I mean, it was crazy. I had I had a Halloween party. You touched on that. I had a Halloween party at my house. I had 450 people in my house for Halloween. It was funny. We decorated. I spent 2 weeks. I had 8 people full time for 2 weeks just decorating the freaking place, right? And upstairs was beautiful. It was like heaven. You'd walk in, there was the pearly gates. It was just beautiful decoration. And everybody would walk into heaven, and there would be, and I kind of did a little play. I grew up in Utah. And, in Utah, the LDS, the Mormon faith there, you don't drink alcohol or tea or, any of these things. And so we had grape juice and cheese and stuff up there. Well, as you descended down the lower levels of the house, you get all the way down to the bottom where you're in the basketball court. We had a full bar set up, and it was decorated like hell, right? We had a live band and everything. What's funny is that halfway through the night, 450 plus people were in hell, right? They're all down in the basketball court. And there was 3 people that were upstairs in the grand great room, decorated like heaven. Those 3 people was 2 guys that were dressed like Jesus and my attorney. And I ran up there, I was joking with my attorney. I says, "What are you doing up here, bro? I thought all attorneys are supposed to be down in hell." But it was a beautiful, fantastic lifestyle. But, every other month I would have parties there where I would have all of the NBA and NFL players that I knew and 150 half-dressed girls. And it was an energy that wasn't in line with the highest and best version of me. And in that version of me is when I started doing child rescue work. And yes, I was making a difference. Literally, I was part of that rescue, that 127 children being rescued in Colombia, and that transformed a big part of my life. Seeing that travesty, I thought, holy hell, I can get behind this. I can fix this problem, throwing money behind it. But in a way, it added to the toxicity of who I was. Why? Because doing undercover work and rescuing trafficked children, now I had the best panty dropper story on the planet, right? I was wealthy, I had a helicopter, I had a jet, I had a massive house, I was rescuing kids, and I had toxic emotional and physical relationships in my life. And I was not in line with the highest and best version of me. And so what happened, and I know it's a long story, but I'm cutting into the real transformation. I got a phone call from 2 of my undercover operators. Now, most of our operators, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, we were burning through operators. These guys, they had seen the worst part of battle in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and one undercover rescue mission. When they are standing there with me and a trafficker opens up a menu with pictures of children, and it effed them up. I mean, they're like PTSD off the charts. And these guys, one undercover mission they couldn't go with anymore. And so I was burning through operators. I had 2 operators, Jimmy and Andy. Jimmy had done, I think, 13 missions with me. Andy had done 22, I think, at the time. And so they were super loyal. They were working hard and making an impact. And they called me on a 3-way call together. And together they said, "Paul, do you trust us?" I said, "Yeah, I trust you literally with my life." We go undercover and, I'm in charge of talking. They're in charge of making sure I don't die. I said, "Yeah, I trust you 100%. They said, "You need to come to this retreat this weekend. It will be the most transformational event of your life." Now, that's saying something. I mean, I know Tony Robbins personally. I literally was next to him walking across coals multiple times. I've done transformational shit, right? So for them to say it's going to be the most transformational event of my life, that's saying something. And then I said, "Well, tell me more about it." They said, "Well, this is this doctor has worked with a lot of people and has identified some different types of holistic tools that help people with anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, ego issues, etc." Now, I knew that world as well. My first successful company in my early 20s, I had 50,000 people a month calling in off of our infomercial to get help with anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, etc. I sold that company for $20 million when I was 29 years old. That's the money I used to start the real estate investment fund, etc. So I know that space. I know cognitive restructuring and whatnot is what we used in that. So for them to say that this is, this can make a huge impact in that arena within 24 to 48 hours, I'm like, that's BS, because it took us 12 weeks with a personal coach every day working with people to help them with debilitating anxiety, depression, addictions. To have that kind of a change that quickly, I was super skeptical. And then they said they're going to be using some different types of plant medicine. And I'm like, plant medicine, like eating healthy. I eat healthy all the time. They said, no, some psychedelic plants. Now, at this point, my radar went up. Why? Because I had grown up, like I said, grown up LDS, Mormon. Alcohol, tea, tobacco, anything that was mind altering in any way was a sin, right? And so this was, if it's a Schedule 1 drug, and I've been taught my entire life that things like psilocybin and other plant type medicines like them, like ayahuasca and others, I had been taught that they were as dangerous as cocaine because they were a Schedule 1 drug. And I started doing some research and realized they were safer than table sugar. And we can get into this, and I know you're know this better than anyone. But I trusted these guys enough. I went to that weekend. And Sam, it was the most transformational 24 hours of my life, And it was the most horrific, beautiful experience I had ever had. It brought me into a state of, I'm going to call it pure empathy. I could feel in every cell of my body, I could feel the pain that my children felt when I cheated on their mom. And then I could feel in every cell of my body the joy of the children that we had helped to liberate from captivity in our child rescue missions. And then I could feel the pain of the families that I had hurt because the husband had been at one of my parties and gotten drunk and been with a girl and whatever else. And every action of my life, I could feel the ripple effect of those actions in the lives of every other person as if I was them. And that changed everything for me.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's a couple key things in there that I wanted to just kind of touch on. First of all, is like, you were making $2,000 a month when you decided to give 20% back. And whether it's the laws of the universe of energy, when you started giving this back into charity, and that's also true with mental health. When you're going through something, when you help someone else, it helps yourself. And so somehow from that $1,600 a month, you built a $1 billion empire, and you're coming back to that point of the word charity. When we get serious about giving back to the universe, giving back to the children, giving back to world hunger, giving back, the universe blesses us tenfold. And so I wanted to just touch on that. And then I also love when you were talking about, you were going on, missions, literally putting your life at risk to rescue sex trafficked children. And we'll dive deeper into this later. But, even while you were doing that, how tricky can the ego be? When you're doing that, even the ego uses that somehow to promote, the idea of the ego and it's me, and and using that to utilize, whatever it is to get an advantage in the world, which will always leave you empty, no matter how much money, no matter how many women, how many 2 waterfalls, a basketball court downstairs will never fulfill, which leads me to this experience that you had. And I'm so happy we're talking about this, which is about psychedelics. And it's such a, programmed and conditioned from the Nixon era into society that the war on drugs, it wasn't the war on drugs, it was the war on consciousness. And literally, Paul just said it in what, he had to spend hours of coaching and months of coaching. And he had a company where they were trying to help people. It would take months and years. And literally with one 24-hour sitting, the most transcendental experience of his life, where he felt the pain of the world, the joy of the children, and And if everybody just did that one time, not only could it help 30, 40 years of trauma with one sitting with the right set, setting, intention, and facilitator, but also once you understand that what you have done unto the least of them, you have done unto me, and you felt that in every cell of your body, if everybody did that overnight, there would be world peace. Literally, because you know that we are all connected after one sitting, and it's not in your mind, it's a felt experience that you have. And Paul, how has your journey been since that experience? I know you're doing retreats now in Colombia. Obviously, you're a believer in this. With your background in finance, with your background in mental health, with your background personal experience now, what message do you have to the world of people who are just starting to wake up to psychedelics, what it is, and they've been programmed to believe it's bad and all these different things?
Well, you hit on it when you said with the right intention, with the right facilitator. I am not a fan whatsoever of somebody going to a rave party and getting high on mushrooms, right? Here's how I see it. When we're born, we come to this earth with what I call a veil, right? We've got this veil of forgetfulness. We don't remember. We don't remember being with God. We don't remember being brothers. We don't remember connecting. We don't remember all this stuff. We're literally acting in faith in our five senses, trying to figure out this world. And there are certain things that we can do that we can begin to thin that veil. And prayer, deep meditation, these are all different tools to start tuning in to the energies that are outside of our understanding of within our five senses. And so within the psychedelic experience, the best thing that I can describe it as is a thinning of the veil. In fact, Johns Hopkins did a study, Johns Hopkins University, and over 850 self-proclaimed atheists, not just agnostics, I don't know if there is a God, atheists, there is no God, right? These are self-proclaimed atheists, over 850 of them in this study with using psilocybin. After one single dose, one single ceremonial experience, a facilitated experience, more than 2/3 of them changed that self-diagnosis and said, no, I am no longer an atheist. There is a God. Now, why is that important with this whole thing? When we're healing our heavy trauma, let's say we were, raped as a child, we were abused physically, verbally, whatever it is, and all of us hold trauma in some way, right? And we're trying to release that. A connection with our Creator is a vital key in releasing that. Addictions, in addition to that, like, for example, the Alcoholics Anonymous program, one of the key success principles in that 12-step program is that acknowledgement of a higher power and acknowledging that I am not able to overcome this on my own. I need that divine light, that spark within me to be able to overcome this addiction. Well, as we're using these tools, the psychedelics, and together with a trained facilitator, as we're using these tools, as that thins that veil, you don't want that veil to be thinned in an unhealthy environment, right? You're at a rave party, you've got rap music going on, you got an orgy going on over there, you got all this crap, and you thin that veil in that environment, no wonders you had a bad trip, right? Okay. However, when you come into it with a clear intention, very specific about what you want to create in your life and what you want to release, what things no longer serve you, and you come into that space and that veil is thinned, and all of a sudden, everything changes. You understand the bigger picture of everything. You understand that the things that we're holding on to that we thought were so important, that we have anxiety and depression about, really are not that important. And we start recognizing who we really are and our infinite spirit that lives within us, and that energetic connection that we have with each other and with God and with everything around us. Once we start tapping into that, then it becomes really easy to make those substantial changes in our life and releasing those things that no longer serve us and embracing that highest and best version of ourselves.
Oh, brother. And, just to reiterate, the science is validating everything that Paul just said. Johns Hopkins University, I interviewed there before I did my residency. one of the most prestigious kind of universities in the modern world. They're doing studies and they're proving, as Paul just said, I don't know, I think it was 85, with one sitting, 85 atheists, 2/3 of them were saying from completely not believing God to believing God. And once you believe in a higher power, the science also proves that those who believe in a higher power have less risk of depression, less risk of anxiety, and their quality of life is improved. And then I love what Paul was saying, the veil, when we are born on earth, we choose to forget. And because we forget that, the arrow missing the mark, right? That's why we miss the mark all the time, is because we're not remembering who we are. But as soon as the veil thins in the right, and I love that we're emphasizing this, it's not just anywhere at a party, no, in the right setting, intention, with the right facilitator. The facilitator opens up the portal to the invisible world. And in a ceremonial environment with one sitting, I've had 77-year-old grandfathers who've been to church their whole life. They've been to church. With one sitting, they come out 6 hours later. For the first time in my life, I felt the love of God. And once you know, you cannot not know this universal force, source, which is within you, for you, through you, all around you. And if God is for you, who could ever be against you? And it switches your life, as it did for my brother Paul. And he literally had that one experience. Now talk to us, Paul. You've been making a difference in the world since that experience in ways and with alignment. And obviously something turned on inside of you. And I want to dive into this. Like, how did that change your work? I know you're involved in Sound of Freedom, and you're also involved in, and I want to dive into this a little bit because, part of me is like, people don't understand, like, you were there talking, you were there in person, risking your life, posing as someone else, undercover, with people who literally could have killed you in any moment. Walk us through what that feels like to be in that situation, why you did it, and and how Sound of Freedom and what your mission is with child sex trafficking.
Absolutely. Well, I'll touch on before psychedelics undercover and after psychedelics undercover,
Yes.
and the difference between the two. So before my first journey experience, I was posing as the wealthy buyer of the children. And that very first undercover mission, what happened, I'll quickly touch on it. I received a phone call from our Attorney General, and he said, Paul, you've donated so much to child-related charities. There's a Homeland Security agent who's found some children in Colombia that are being trafficked. And he needs some money to make a rescue mission happen. So I helped to fund that and introduced him to a couple of people that could help as well. A few weeks later, that agent called me. He said, Paul, I'm in Cartagena, Colombia. There's not just 20 children here like I thought. There's more than 50, and there's more than 100 children in trafficking rings in other cities that we've identified. He said, we believe we can rescue all 100 children at the same time on the same day, but I need your help. And I, my ego me was like, well, how much do you need? Thinking I could write a big check. He says, well, it's going to be, over $250,000. He said, I need you. So you need me? He goes, yeah, can you be in Colombia in 2 days? He said the head trafficker has a piece of property he wants to develop into a child brothel sex resort. He needs about $8 million to build it out. He believes he could make tens of millions of dollars a year selling children to wealthy Americans. He said, what our plan is you fly down here, you tell him, listen, I'm willing to fund your project under one condition. I want to have a party. You're going to show up with all of your existing inventory, and if I'm satisfied, then I'll consider funding your project. I'll bring a bunch of my buddies down for this party. So 2 days later, I was face to face with the most evil people I had ever encountered that were literally selling children. Now, let me touch on this because I think this is important. I thought that child traffickers would have, 3 earrings in their noses and tattoos down their necks and, look like street thugs. And the first trafficker that I met was a businessman. He was in a white polo shirt. He was clean shaven, well spoken. The second I met was a beautiful woman. She was running a modeling agency. And I thought, these aren't traffickers. But as soon as we sat down and started talking about their hideous plan to sell these children to wealthy Americans, I realized, holy hell, they really are. This is horrific. And I realized over a period of 10 years, I led or played a key part in over 70 undercover rescue missions in 15 countries. And Sam, the common thread with all of the traffickers and all the perpetrators wasn't tattoos on their necks and earrings in their noses. The common thread was arrogance and greed and lust. Now, here's the problem. Paul Hutchinson at the time, with helicopter and a jet and a basketball court in his basement, was filled with arrogance, greed, and lust. Now, I wasn't doing anything illegal. I wasn't doing anything immoral when it came to, children, whatever. I was plenty of immoral things with cheerleaders and whatever, but nothing that I realized, though, that energy that I was living in some way was contributing to the toxicity of this world. But for another year or two, I continued in that energy. I continued to play that role, because what happened, I flew down there, I'm meeting with these guys, we end up setting up this party. The thing that changed my life in terms of my commitment to that cause was they brought out these children, these 3 little girls and 1 little boy. They were all virgins, scared to death. This little boy was 11. They gave him cocaine because he was so scared it was going to hurt. This little girl standing in front of me, I'm sitting down on a chair like I am now. Standing in front of me, she wasn't much taller than I was as I was sitting down. And I could see into her eyes, eye level like this. And all I could see was fear. And at that point, I made a commitment to myself, to God, to that child, to children in slavery everywhere, that I would dedicate my life to eradicating that evil from the face of the earth. And so, and the most beautiful moment for me was after the agents came, stormed the party, arrested everybody, Child Protective Services people came in with the children, and they started laughing and singing with the children. And that singing, that laughter, that sound of freedom was the most beautiful sound that I ever heard. That's why we named the movie The Sound of Freedom. And so I dedicated my life. I'm like, I'll help. What can I do? I started doing undercover work. I started posing as this wealthy playboy that was paying for these parties. And it worked really well. A year and a half later, I was asked to go deep cover. 2 a.m. in downtown Port-au-Prince in Mexico City, making friends with the traffickers and connecting them with what would be my boss paying for these parties, etc. And I got to see the darkest part of humanity. Children being in the most atrocious places, in cells that were 6 feet deep and 5 feet wide, with a steel plank that was held to the wall with a chain. And this little girl looking up at me with this blank look in her eyes. She was taken when she was 7. Her parents were killed in the earthquake in Haiti, and she didn't say one word. She was sold for sex every day for 7 years. And that little girl didn't say one word for 2 weeks after we rescued her. Mm-hmm. And her very first words that she said were, "I didn't think anybody would come." Because she had given up hope 7 years before. Nobody even knew she was alive. And now there's she's with family members now and back in school and learning to dance, beautiful life that she's trying to break free of all that toxicity. But then, after, and in those ones, it was going in and making friends with these guys. After my first journey experience, and I started tuning in to the energy of everything around me, I'll tell you about the last set of rescue missions I did in Ecuador, just right before the Sound of Freedom movie came out, because I couldn't do public appearances while doing undercover. And so my last ones were a little over a year ago. And I remember the federal agents in Ecuador had called. And this after the journey, I started tuning in to that still small voice of truth. And was incredibly successful in finding exactly where these children were and what we needed to do to keep our team safe. So, for example, the federal agents in Ecuador had identified some trafficking rings going on, wanted us to come in, play the role of the wealthy American interested in, parties or connecting with these traffickers, et cetera, do what we did. And we went in and they said, okay, there's and I won't tell you all of them. We literally took down 6 different trafficking rings and rescued hundreds of children as part of some of these operations. But the one of them, he said, okay, we had some intel of this massage parlor thing that was actually selling children as part of it, using children as that was their front. They had a hair and makeup place, and that was a front. And the massages in the back area, they had children that they were trafficking. And so the federal agent's driving this undercover van. I'm there with a couple of our operators, and he says, oh, crap. I said, what? He said, well, our tip was about a month ago. He said it was supposed to be there. He says the entire operation is shut down. There's nothing here. There's no salon. There's no hair thing. There's nothing here. And I said, stop. He said, stop. He said, it's gone. I said, no, stop. I can feel it. You need to stop right now. He pulls the van over. I said, there's children being sold here. I can feel it. And I jumped out, and Petter jumps out. He's a former Green Beret, and Jimmy and Jeremy jump out, 2 of the other undercover operators. And I go around the back of the van, and I'm just standing there, and I'm just listening. I'm just tuning in. This is post-journey. This is when you identify the fact that everything is connected, and this is a spiritual war. And I was just feeling everything out. And I had this super strong prompting to go over to this. There was a few restaurants in the area, and I went over to this restaurant that was across the street. And I walked in, and I asked for the manager. And I said, hey, I'm looking. I'm supposed to find a massage place here. There used to be a massage place that's here somewhere. Is it gone? Where is it? And he says to me, he goes, do you have an appointment? I freaking knew that place was still there, right? I said, no. He goes, oh, no, I don't want to talk about it. I'll just shut down. Okay, I got this, right? So I walk out in front, and again, I'm just tuning in. I'm listening. I'm writing a book now called Are You Listening with My Hand on My Heart? Not are you listening with my hand on my ear, but are you listening with my hand on my heart? Because I truly believe that every single person was born with the ability to feel and recognize the spirit of truth. But we have so many distractions going on, and we don't get to the point where we can tune in, and that's why we get so off course. And I talk about some of these missions. And so I walk out in front of the restaurant, and I'm just feeling the energy of what's going on. And there's this lady that's walking with her dog and a couple other people, and I felt super strong. That lady right there, she knows. And I walked over to her, and I said, excuse me. I said, now, I'll tell you this, I lied undercover. That's what you do, right? I said, hey, I have an appointment for a massage at a place here, but I don't know where it is. Where is it? She goes, oh, you have an appointment? She looks at me, and I've got a hat on that says FUCKERS upside down on it. I've got a big fat silver chain. I've got a shirt on that has a drawn picture of a doctor type of a guy that says, I'm no gynecologist, but I'll take a look, right? I mean, I look like a piece of shit, right? I look like a scumball. She looks me up and down. She goes, oh yeah, okay, and she picks up her phone. She makes a phone call to a madam who's running that trafficking operation for the children. Less than 2 minutes later, this madam comes and opens these 2 steel doors of this outside patio type of area. Me and my operators walk in there. She shuts the doors, goes down a bunch of sidewalks up and around this maze type thing. We could feel that we were being watched. And then she brings us into this lobby area, incredibly secluded, with rooms all around the outside, with a massage table and a queen-size bed in each one of the rooms. And then she opens up a menu and shows us what she has for sale. And we said, yeah, that's what our boss is looking for. We don't want any of them right now, but we were able to geotag the location. They went in and shut that operation down, rescued about 24 kids that were a part of it. So the list goes on. And again, I've got 70 undercover rescue missions that I was a part of. But it's important to understand that you can fight that evil with firefighting with fire, like what I was before, or you can simply tune in to that still small voice of truth.
Mm.
But moving forward, and I'll let you talk for a second and ask some questions, but the real answer is not just the rescue missions. The real answer is healing humanity and taking away that demand. And that's what we can talk about moving forward as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that. So it seems like, you know, in that movie, The Sound of Freedom, where they're going down to Colombia. I don't know if you guys have watched that, but that was Paul in real life. That was based upon his character as he was there, and putting his life at risk to rescue these children. And when the girls yelled freedom, when the rescue mission came in and they knew they were free, that's what the movie is named after. And so
And it's important to know that
yeah,
there's a lot of operators that were a part of that. We literally took about 20 operators and 8 different rescue missions and put them all together into one storyline with a handful of actors. Eduardo Verástegui, who's the producer of Sound of Freedom, plays the part of the wealthy fund manager who quits his job to go rescue kids. But the reality is there were a lot of good people that were involved in a lot of those missions.
beautiful. Yeah, I love that clarification. And with that being said, it's like I love that Paul told a story. You told the story about like post journeying. There was something that was activated within you, which is this ability to tune into that still quiet voice, the direct cognitive knowing. Once you had pledged your life to service for these to end child sex trafficking, then the universe started working for you, and you listened with your heart. And if you follow that still quiet voice, it will lead and guide you as it did Paul, and it literally led to the rescue post of so many children. And I love that you brought it through, yes, ending sex child trafficking, but also helping humanity. And I was there, had the privilege of holding space when you were literally downloading with your heart was full of this desire to help liberate humanity. I know you have a company or like called Liberating Humanity, and a child liberation foundation. So you're doing it. Can you tell us more about Liberating Humanity, Paul, Child Liberation Foundation, not just rescuing the children, but how can we become more aware of what's happening and play our part in also helping it as well?
Absolutely. So 2 or 3 things. First of all, I realized after 10 years of undercover work and all of these missions that just doing undercover and finding these kids and pulling them out of hell was never going to fix the problem. In reality, every time we pulled 20 children out of hell, it left a vacuum. And if there was still a demand, then 20 more or 30 more children were being sucked into the deepest recesses of hell to fulfill that demand. And so I started asking myself where this demand is coming from. I mean, not only how does somebody get to the point where they are selling a child, but how does somebody get to the point where they are abusing a child? And I came to an understanding that most of them were abused themselves as children. Now, don't get me wrong. This does not make it okay in any way. The majority of people that were abused as children grow up to be protectors. There's no way that somebody's going to cross that line with my kids or anybody else because of the fact that this is what happened. A lot of my operators had abuse as children themselves, and it made them hardened, focused on eliminating that evil. However, 1 out of 3, especially men, who were abused as children, if not given the love, the help, the tools, the healing that they need, 1 in every 3 will become a contact offender, either physically, verbally, or sexually abusing a child. And so it's vitally important that we identify how to fix that. That's how we take away the demand. Now, I tell people, don't get me wrong. I am not a sympathizer of somebody who abuses a child. Once you cross that line, you're wasting my oxygen, right? Let's make sure. I have literally put my life in danger hundreds of times to ensure that person never hurts innocence again. However, we have to look at this thing from a compassionate standpoint. We have to say, how did that person get to that point? And can we back it up? I found myself wishing that I had a time machine, that I could go back 5 years or 10 years before that child was ever abused and rescue them there. Or what would I do at that point? I would sit down with the perpetrator before he ever crossed that line and say, what is going on in your life that makes you think that in any way going down that road is okay? What kind of pain are you carrying that we can help you offload that pain so that you never transfer that trauma on to another human being, especially a child? And so as I started looking into that, and especially in the journey work and realizing in the beginning, after my personal transformation, we started bringing in a lot of our operators. These are guys who had been stamped for life with you have PTSD on their medical records, right? They've got to be on Prozac and Xanax forever just to deal with life. And we started bringing in these operators into these psychedelic experiences. And one of them had told me, he says, Paul, he says, I've heard what you're doing with these journeys. He said, I have to tell you something. Now, he had led 300 missions as a Green Beret. I mean, he had seen the darkest part of battle. And he said, Paul, he said, I love my wife and my children, but I don't feel love. I don't feel anything. I don't feel love for myself. He says, I put up these walls with years of battle in leading these missions in the Middle East and other areas. He said, and then doing undercover with you, he says, I felt it even more. He said, and his wife had been on anxiety medication for over 10 years. We brought them in as a couple into one of these experiences with psilocybin and some others, with some trained facilitators. That evening, after 6 hours of journey experience, he came to me with tears in his eyes, gave me this huge hug, and he said, Paul, he said, for the first time that I can remember, I feel everything. He said, I feel love for my wife. I feel love for my children. I feel love for myself. I feel love from God like I've never felt before. And we were able to help these hardened military heroes break free from all of this heavy energy that they've been carrying for so many years. And then we started bringing in women who were raped by their uncles and their bishops and their fathers and sold by their mothers, and horrible things, and 20 years worth of therapy weren't getting anything done. And 2 or 3 days worth of focused journey experiences, they were able to break free of all of that heavy energy. And 10 and 20 years worth of therapy done, which was incredibly beautiful. And so myself, my wife, my daughter, we started getting certified and learning everything we could about this work. In fact, my daughter got to spend so much time with you and learning the amazing man that you are and the tools that you use to help people transcend and break free from all of this stuff. And I realized that if my goal was to eradicate child trafficking, I wasn't doing a very good job doing undercover, because 10 years of that work, there was more children being sold than there was when I first started. That doesn't sound like eradicating anything. So I took a step back and said, how can we take away the demand? How can we heal humanity? Somebody doesn't just grow up and decide, oh, I'm going to go to Colombia and go rape some children down there. No, they started out abusing children in their own neighborhood, in their own homes. And so if we can help break that pattern before that happens, in fact, here's a scary number. It's not just the 10 million children that are being sold in trafficking. There are literally over a billion women. 1/4 of all women that you know were sexually abused as children. With men, it's a little bit less. It's 1 in every 5 of us at some time in our life, about 20%. But even them, 1 out of every 4 of them, it was under the age of 10 years old in their own homes. So we need to pay attention. People leave the Sound of Freedom. They're like, what can I do? I want to help. I want to go rescue kids. Well, the worst thing you can do is go to Colombia and Mexico, go try to, rescue kids there. You're going to get shot. You're probably going to get arrested. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children. People are like, well, how's that going to help? Well, the children that get taken are usually part of broken foster care program or runaways or broken families, etc. So if you can hold together a nuclear family, that's incredibly important. And having a relationship with your children where they can very comfortably come to you and say, Dad, Mom, I don't like it when you tell me to hug Uncle Harry because he touches me weird and he tells us we should have secrets outside of you. Or I don't like going to this friend's house because her brother has been taking pictures of us when we're changing, and he says he's gonna send him out to our school if we don't do other things with him and his friends. Or I don't like this babysitter because she's showing us pornography and tells us we should trust her more than you. These are grooming behaviors. And we as parents need to have healthy relationships with our children where they can come to us and tell us when something's wrong. In addition to that, every single one of us need to look in the mirror and say, how am I adding to this problem? I promise everybody is, right? If you're living with any degree of arrogance and greed and lust, then the ripple effect of our actions eventually will affect children. And so by helping people come to that realization, whether it's in a plant medicine journey experience or whether it's a deep meditation, whether it's, I have people that can help people get to that point with just breath work exercises. But somehow you need to come face to face with your own demons and release those things that don't serve you. Release those things, everything of our past, whether it's things that we did or things that were done to us, everything can be healed. All of them are going to require the help of your divine creator to do so, but all of them can be healed. And that is what liberating humanity is all about.
Oh, brother. Yeah, beautiful. Few things from there is, I love that when you're touching on like hurt people, even these victimizers were abused as children. And 1 out of 3 men who are abused go on to hurt people. It's energy that is passed on over and over and over and over again. And really, if you want to change the world, change yourself. And I love that you're once again talking about our veteran population, a Green Beret. Our veterans have been through things just like the children, sex trafficked children who, a human should never see. They've seen things and they carry this trauma and they come home to their families and they're trying to be good family, but they've literally had to put on a shield, an armor to numb themselves so they cannot feel. That's the way that they've survived. And what Paul is saying is we now have technologies within one journey where this beautiful brother who's led, I don't know, you think 30 or 300, whatever,
300 missions,
Green Beret battles, 300 missions comes out and for the first time is feeling, and 30, 40, 50 years of trauma. As a psychiatrist, Paul and I are both seeing it. We're both seeing can be processed and integrated and healed. And when the healing of one is the healing of all, maybe the healing of that one brother, one person is going to help a lineage and a ripple effect of hurt and healing that would have rippled through to children, to soldiers, to families. And so to liberate humanity, I love that you're touching on that, is like begin by hugging our children, begin by loving ourselves and healing ourselves and feeling deeply ourselves. And these tools and technologies are now here. And I see that you've shifted your focus now. I know you guys are holding retreats. You're working with a lot of different medicines. You've investigated so many different strategies. I know with Child Liberation Foundation now, even with rescued children, you're setting up different programs and different things. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about what you have going on these days, and how we can support and get involved?
Absolutely. Thank you. So yes, the Child Liberation Foundation is a foundation that I set up a number of years ago while I was still doing undercover. In the beginning, that foundation was just a place where I would put my own money, and anytime I had a distribution, I would put 20% of that money there and it would help to fund all the rescue missions that we were doing, etc. Today, it is focused primarily on healing. Yes, we have some groups of former military guys that I worked with undercover that we help fund a lot of their missions. But the primary focus of the foundation is in creating long-term solutions, in awareness programs for parents, awareness programs, certification programs for hotels, for police departments, etc. We're working primarily in Latin America. This is where a lot of the rescue missions that I had a part of, and we've got great connections with governments everywhere. With the success of our movie, the governments everywhere are opening up their doors saying, what can we do? How can we help? And people, all of the people that put them in office are saying, you need to do something about that. So it's beautiful. We're able to change laws, change policies, programs for the safe houses that are really effective in helping these children break free of the trauma that they've endured. And again, we are doing a lot of preventative measures as well. This last Christmas, we gave away almost 5,000 gifts of healing to children in safe houses, in underprivileged neighborhoods, high risk neighborhoods for children because they have a lot of refugees and orphanages, etc. So it was an absolutely beautiful experience to connect with a lot of these children in giving them these gifts of healing. And so you can go to childliberation.org, and or you can just look up the Child Liberation Foundation online. It'll take you right in there to the Child Liberation website where you can get involved. We have a lot of people that are just donating monthly. If you don't have a charity that you really love and support, please get behind what we're doing. And $100 a month isn't a big deal. You probably spend more than that on your coffee addiction, right? So let's just take a percentage of what you bring in every month and find a way to make a powerful, positive impact in the lives of others, and in this case, the children. Now, you can also look me up anywhere online. Just type in Liberating Humanity on Instagram, on Facebook, on X. I have the Liberating Humanity podcast where I talk about a lot of these things. In fact, eventually, Dr. Sam, I want to bring you on as my guest in Liberating Humanity because I have so much respect for you as a medical professional who saw the light and became awakened much earlier than most other doctors and saw the power of these medicines and how effective they can be. And so I would love to have you on the Liberating Humanity podcast. People can go to liberatinghumanity.com and get tools to help keep your children safe. Or if you want to pre-order the Sound of Freedom book, it's coming out very soon. It's actually completed. We're just working on distribution. You can go to soundoffreedombook.com and it'll take you right into Liberating Humanity onto the page where you can pre-sign up for it. So those are all ways that I would love to connect. And if somebody's really feeling called to do a fully immersive transformational experience, get in touch with Dr. Sam. You can even look us up on Liberating Humanity and learn about some of our retreats as well. But get the help. And you don't have to be super broken to come to these. We're working with a lot of what I call the tip of the umbrella. These are doctors. These are PhDs. These are big influencers, royalty, world leaders that we have coming into our transformational retreats, so they can learn how to lead from a place of the heart. They can release those things that don't serve them anymore and embrace the highest and best version of themselves.
Beautiful, Paul. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So we'll link all these things down in the podcast notes. Liberating Humanity, Child Liberation Foundation. Yeah, and thank you, Paul, so much for who you are, for your path, for your journey, and for your heart. Appreciate you taking the time today to jump on and discuss all these beautiful things. And Paul, any last words for humanity, for it's such an interesting time in humanity right now with all these things going on. Any last words for
Just
any listener out there?
just incredible gratitude. When I teach people in our guided meditation, I tell them, that remember those old radios you had to tune in just to the right frequency, otherwise it was all just static. So many times, when we pray, it's all just one-sided. God fix this, and we don't take the time to listen. In that listening, our bodies are a transmitter and a receiver, and we have to tune in to that right frequency. And for me, the frequency of God is infinite, unconditional love. And so as I'm diving into my meditations, I have to focus on that energy. And I actually start with my daughter, Kira, because she's the easiest person to have unconditional love for, right? She can screw up, she can burn down the house tomorrow, and I still love her, right? So I tune into that unconditional, infinite love for her, and then I mirror that for the rest of my family, for the rest of humanity, even those people who have wronged me. I have to feel that high, high vibration of infinite unconditional love. Then my next one is gratitude. I feel infinite gratitude for all that was, all that is, and all that will be. And as I can tune into those high frequencies, then I'm able to start receiving in a super beautiful way. And so at this point, Dr. Lee, I want to express my infinite unconditional love for you, for your audience,
Yeah.
and my extreme gratitude for your trust in me and bringing me here and allowing me to share and speak on your platform. Incredibly, incredibly grateful.
Thank you, brother. It's a joy and an honor to have you here. Thanks, Paul, and so many pearls of wisdom. Go back, listen to it. Charity, get involved, go hug your children, and tune in as Paul's doing a daily practice every single day, tuning into that unconditional love, radiated out from your heart to your children's heart to humanity's heart. And yeah, hang on, let's go. New Earth. Here we go. Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you, Seth.